All right, guys. Hi, everyone. How are we doing so far today? Having a good day? Yeah, awesome. All right, my name is Dr. Stephanie, or Dr. Stephanie Estima. I am the founder of a clinic here in Toronto called the Health Loft. Also, the founder of a nutrition program called the Keto Clean program, and we're going to dive into a little bit about that as well. We are going to geek out hard today together on the ketogenic diet, some of the areas where people tend to mess up on keto. And then I'd love to, if I can, for some of the clinicians and some of the women in the audience, also carve out some special considerations for the female patient or the female on keto, because there are some differences in our biology and our physiology that really does affect our response to it. So this is just my baby. This is the Health Loft here in Toronto. My mission in terms of my through line for health is really helping high achievers become high performers. And I'm a really big advocate for health and healthcare to be fun, easy, and collaborative, because it is completely boring, and I would blow my brains out if I had to, work in an over-sterilized place where people, got mad at you when you went up to them. So I always try to inject a lot of fun and lightness to my healthcare center, because I think it's important for people to feel like it's a safe space for them to heal. All right, so let's dive in a little bit with the key to the O. So we have the ketogenic diet. A lot of you here have heard of keto, hands up. All of you have heard of keto? Okay. So ketogenic diet is essentially a high-fat diet for like the one or two people that didn't raise their hand. It's a high-fat diet with a moderate to low protein. And that's important because a lot of people think keto is high protein. It is not. Moderate to low protein consumption and a very low carbohydrate consumption, okay? The hallmark of a ketogenic diet is the ability to induce something called ketosis, or an endogenous production of ketone bodies. So when we are thinking about fuel sources in the body, of course, I'm painting a little bit of broad strokes here, but for simplicity, we have glucose, which is derived from carbohydrates or excess protein in our diet. And we have ketone bodies, which is the result of after, we see fat cells, we break them down through the process of beta oxidation. We have the production of ketone bodies. One of the more famous or more well-known ones would be, not famous, but maybe famous, beta hydroxybutyrate, or BHB, or BOHB for short. And we're going to be talking a little bit about BOHB today as well. So endogenous ketogenic or ketone body production is the hallmark of a ketogenic diet. One of the reasons why keto has become so popular is it has a very profound effect on weight loss. And that's why everybody from people who watch the Jersey Shore to Dom D'Agostino, we have like Keto Guido on one hand and Dom on the other, talking about the powerful effects of the ketogenic diet. So we see, because we are tapping into our own body's fat stores, your excess adiposity or your excess adipose tissue, we are able to truly lose weight, and the weight that we want to be losing, right? We're not having sarcopenia or anything like that. Some of the other positive things that happen on a ketogenic diet is we see people's lipid profiles improve. So we will see triglyceride levels lower. We will see the ratio of HDL, high-density lipoprotein, to low-density lipoprotein improve. And that's probably an entire lecture in and of itself. But high-density lipoprotein is like the Chanel bag. It's a really well-constructed lipoprotein that carries the cholesterol to its target cell.
Alexa?
And low-density lipoprotein is kind of the
demo,
knockoff. Voice of God, I'm here. Low-density lipoprotein is like the knockoff Canal Street bag that's bringing the cholesterol to the target. I'm also super quirky, and I talk really fast. So I hope that you guys get my jokes, because I think I'm hilarious. So Chanel bag, Canal Street bag, HDL to LDL ratio. The other thing that we find in a ketogenic diet is it's really, really awesome for improving insulin resistance, right? So some of the metabolic profiles that we see, type 2 diabetics, pre-diabetics, metabolic syndrome, some of the hallmarks, people who have excess things like sucralose and aspartame, like artificial sweeteners, we also are seeing those people develop insulin resistance and insulin resistance profiles. On a ketogenic diet, we find that your insulin resistance is improved. So insulin resistance, very simply, is when you are constantly initiating an insulinergic response through things like carbohydrates or excess protein in the diet, your cells get sick and tired of seeing insulin, so they stop listening to her. and that's called insulin resistance. So ketogenic diet, because you are lowering the protein and you are lowering the carbohydrates, you are also lowering the response of insulin. So that is one of the reasons why it has become so popular. The other reason why it is super popular and why I'm super interested in it is its implications for longevity. So when we think about living a long life, we're thinking about improving lifespan. And there's a lot of research now that talks about total carbohydrate consumption linked to all-cause mortality, meaning the more carbohydrates that you eat, the more you will die from many different things. So longevity, or lifespan, is really important for the ketogenic diet. The other thing that some of the emerging research is talking about now is health span. So it's one thing to live to 150, but if you're sick and tired and miserable, like what's the point, right? So we want to be thinking about lifespan as well as health span. And the ketogenic diet there's some emerging research now that's really exciting that supports that. So let's talk a little bit about its effects on the brain. And if you don't mind, we're all going to go on a nerd safari together. And I promise we will come back unscathed. But this is really where the ketogenic diet shines, in my opinion. How many of you, with a show of hands, are paid for your brute strength, your physical strength? None of you? How many of you paid for your brain strength? Yeah, right? So super important to have a strong brain. And part of the way that the ketogenic diet does that is through something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. There are other things that keto does, glial-derived neurotrophic factor, but for the most part, a lot of the research has been done on BDNF. This has two main functions in your brain. When you are upregulating the enzyme and the gene expression of BDNF, you are protecting the neuronal cells that you already have, and you are driving the growth of new neuronal cells. So when I was doing my undergrad in neuroscience at U of T here in Toronto, we were taught that the amount of nerve cells that you had were finite. So if you damage your central nervous system in some way, whether a traumatic insult or what have you, that was it. There was no more regenerative powers. We know now that is absolutely not the case, right? So BDNF does, if there's one takeaway that I want you guys to remember here, it keeps your brain big, thick, and juicy. Okay? And if there's one area of your body that you want to be big, thick, and juicy, it's going to be your brain. Okay? So BDNF, and the really cool thing actually about BDNF is we can upregulate our own levels of BDNF. So things like nutrition, which we're talking about now. The state of ketosis. Fasting is another one. I know fasting's been mentioned a couple of times here today. And I should also mention that the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimetic diet, meaning that all the benefits that we see from keto, we also see amplified when we actually pair them together with fasting. Things like supplementing with omega-3s, that all upregulates BDNF, keeping your brain big, thick, and juicy. Other things are training, so burst training, like high-intensity interval training, heavy weights, that will also upregulate BDNF, and things like sleep and your stress levels. In my clinic here in Toronto at the Health Loft, we talk a lot about nutrition and movement therapy, macro and micro movement therapies. And the one thing that I will always tell my patients is it doesn't matter if you have your keto on point and your fitness is on point. If you can't sleep and you can't reduce your chronic stress, you're still going to be attenuating that BDNF response, and you will become, we know that like chronic stress makes us stupid over time. It makes us more stupid as time goes on. So this is really important. I wanted to, just on our nerd safari together, wanted to talk about some of the really cool things that ketone bodies do. So one of the main ketone bodies that is endogenously produced is called beta-hydroxybutyrate. We can also take it exogenously as well through things like ketone esters and ketone salts. But this particular study looked at the effect of applying an exogenous ketone, in this case it was beta-hydroxybutyrate, on cerebral blood flow in humans. So if you look on your left side, you see the CTR there. That is a PET scan, and we can see that the green and the blue, that's kind of like cool areas, right? So mild to not a lot of activity there. On the right, you'll see KET. Underneath that is after the application of ketone bodies. And what this study particularly found was that BHB reduced glucose utilization in the brain and preferentially increased cerebral blood flow in humans. So we often talk about like animal studies as kind of being the low level, like, there's some questionability about how it's applying to humans. This study was done directly on humans, so I really, really love this one. They also found that BHB was what used less oxygen per unit of ATP. So ATP is like our energetic currency. That's what's produced from the mitochondria. That's what we are using and creating every single second of every single day of our lives. So BHB was a more efficient ATP yield per unit of oxygen. And it also, kind of piggybacking on that, also reduced something called ROS, or reactive oxygen species. So we see this a lot in the nutrition industry, where we talk, well, you see like a beautiful bowl of like blueberries, or you'll see broccoli, and there's like these they're touted for their antioxidant properties. We also see this in like the cosmetic industry with like creams and whatever for their antioxidant properties as well. ROS or reactive oxygen species are the things that create oxidative damage in the body. So the presence of BHB also attenuates the oxidative stress on the body when it's used as a fuel source. And then the other thing that it does, through being a class 2 HDAC inhibitor, it ups that BDNF again, that big, thick, and juicy brain. Simply stated, I like to nerd out hard and then like summarize it. Ketones are a more efficient source of energy designed specifically for the brain. Okay, the other thing that the ketogenic diet is really awesome for is something called autophagy. I've heard it from some of our speakers. I heard Ben talking about it before. Autophagy, for those of you that that remember your biology, it is when an autophagosome fuses with a lysosome, and then the autolysosome lyses the interior, like the macrophage lyses the interior of mutated and damaged cells. So simply put another way, it turns your immune system into Pac-Man. So what we're doing is your immune system will seek out and destroy mutated cells or damaged cells or bits of cells, like bits of organelles and nucleotides and whatever, and it will kind of engulf it and get rid of it. How many of you are close to 40 years old or over 40? Okay, so when we think about the power of autophagy, or turning your immune system into Pac-Man, the 4 things that we tend to really be concerned with as we turn 40 and beyond are cerebrovascular, neurovascular, neurodegenerative diseases, and cancer. Right? So this is a powerful tool to elicit some of the protective effects against heart attacks, myocardial infarcts, strokes, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. And some current theories on cancer are that some cancers anyway, are a metabolic or an endocrine problem. So it's not just that you have the gene, it's the epigenetics and the machinery that you have not turned on that will lead to metastasis and mutation. I love this slide, so I just kept it in. It was just really showing very simply that glucose has more steps to create ATP than ketone bodies do. So you can see that there are 8 less steps in a ketone body synthesis in the mitochondria in the production of ATP, which is our energetic currency. Okay, so the ketogenic diet is awesome sauce. We love it, but a lot of people will come to me, especially in the program that I run, the Keto Clean program, and they'll say, you know what, I've tried keto. It didn't work for me. I wasn't doing it right, blah, blah, blah. And these are like, I want to talk about some of the common challenges that a lot of people who have tried keto before, or they're kind of curious about it. I want to talk about some of those things, and I would like to also, if I can, carve out some special considerations for women as well. So one of the more common things that we hear, and we're just going to label this GI distress, is that we see 2 ends of the spectrum when somebody is adapting a ketogenic diet. So we often see someone come from what we call a SAD diet, or a standard American diet, SAD, and it is really sad, diet. When we start giving them whole foods, nourishing fats, nutrient-dense phytonutrients from plants, we are now selectively asking the microbiome to get rid of some of the passive or aggressive bacteria in the microbiome. And that can actually cause a lot of loose stools, diarrhea, explosive diarrhea. So some people will be like, I am not doing that. There's no way that I'm gonna subject myself to that. On the other end of the spectrum of GI distress, we see a lot of people who are starting to eat a ketogenic style diet get super constipated. So like, I haven't had a bowel movement in 4 days. Like, I don't understand what's happening. And most of the time, when we see that, what we're seeing in both situations, in the first one, we are seeing the microbiome shift. So as there are bacteria that are dying off, they will release something called an endotoxin, and that's kind of what is causing that nausea and that upset stomach. In the other scenario, when we are having a lot of constipation or slower bowel movements, there's a slower transit time through the large intestine. It is usually because people think that this is keto, right? Bacon has become the unofficial mascot of the ketogenic diet. Am I right? It's like, can I have a side of bacon, fried with bacon, wrapped in bacon with some bacon juice on the side? And can I have some extra bacon with that? So this is, and listen, I love bacon, okay? I like bacon and I do consume bacon. But when we are thinking about a long-term strategy, like, and I'm not going to call out companies and people who do this, but there are some people that will advocate that you reserve bacon fat that has been heated up and then you eat it and you consume it. Like, what are you thinking? When we're talking about longevity and we're playing the long game, like this, in the short term, you'll lose weight here, right? But the short game is for chumps. I'm not into that. I'm really about thinking about strategies that we can do for you for the long term. So bacon, not a lot of fiber, right? Not a lot of nutrients, a lot of chemicals in there. This is really what the basis of a ketogenic diet should be. Green, leafy vegetables. Bonus points if you guys can call out two of these guys. Anyone know what these guys are? These weird green shapes. What was that? Cruciferous? Yeah, there's cruciferous vegetables in here. Can anybody name the actual veggies? Kale, I heard kale. Swiss chard, rainbow chard, yeah. What? Bok choy, number 2, very well done. Anyone know what 12 is? Dandelion. That was the only one I couldn't, who said that? Nice. Yeah, that was the only one I couldn't identify, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come up on stage and someone's gonna know this. So green leafy vegetables. And when I'm teaching my children, because I'm a mother of 3, I'm not cooking other stuff for them. They eat what I eat, so they eat a ketogenic diet. When I'm teaching them how to build their plate, it goes something like this. Honey, where are the plants? That's the first thing they have to identify. Where is the fat? And then where is the protein? And that's it. That's the only thing they should be able to see on their plate. So it should be plants as the base, fat as the fill, and meat as a condiment. Okay? So meat should be used as a condiment, not the main event, as a condiment. So another visual for you guys, if you kind of look at your hand and you sort of look at the inside part of your palm, that would be an appropriate serving for you. So this is your hypothenar your thenar eminence, not the puffy parts, not the bits here on your hand that are kind of coming out, like the inside part of that. That's the meat. That's the meat. Again, I know you guys heard Dr. Jason Fung here yesterday. He talks about, brilliantly, talks about phytonutrients, like the fiber that's in, like the insoluble fiber that's in these green leafy vegetables. These are so important. And he talks about fiber as an anti-nutrient, which is genius, because when we think about fiber, insoluble fiber in particular, the long carbon chains in it doesn't allow, like our body does not break that down. So it just kind of passes through the intestinal tract and it kind of cleans everything up. It also attracts a lot of water to it. So when we're thinking about constipation, right, it's usually like, you know, a lot of women and a lot of men will say to me, I'm just having these small little rabbit poos. But when you're having, I mean, it's the truth. I hear a lot of things as a doctor, but when you are having insoluble fiber, that will attract water to it, soften the stool, and allow it to move through the gastrointestinal tract appropriately. The other thing that we find is an energetic lag. So a lot of people will feel like they are absolutely spent on a ketogenic diet, especially in the first couple days, especially as your machinery is switching over, like as your mitochondria are used to using glucose as their energetic source, and then they are moving over to using ketone bodies, they can just feel like completely lethargic, completely tired, like they've been hit with a truck. A lot of ways that we circumvent that is by electrolyte supplementation. So anybody here heard of the keto flu or low carb flu? Yeah, a lot of you. So when you are first switching over that machinery, dizziness, headaches, confusion, lethargy, nausea, like the loose stools that I was talking about before, a lot of those things can be eradicated or circumvented with electrolyte supplementation. So I really like to give patients a sodium. The only one that's not on here would be chlorine. So sodium, magnesium, potassium. And if you don't have the, if it's not in your budget for, supplementation, like some Himalayan salt, like a bit of Himalayan salt in water will give you the NaCl. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about I want to carve out a little bit of considerations for the female patient, because we know, at least in my clinical experience, I have found that I will have like a female and a male couple. They're like, we're going to lose weight together. We're going to change our life. We're going to have a healthy lifestyle. And then the guy just thinks about it. Like in a week, he's lost 40 pounds. He's reached his target weight. And the woman's like, I don't know what the hell, I'm eating the same. Like I've lost 2 pounds. What's going on? So part of the reason is that we are, and I think this is a good thing. I will choose to look at it as a good thing anyway. We are more complex, okay? So when we look at the hormonal environment, the hormonal landscape of a woman, she is more complex than her male counterparts. And that's just not like cyclically. So we have like every month there's a cycle of hormones that has to come through, but through the course of her life. So we have premenstrual, a time when she's premenstrual, a time when she's fertile. We have premenopausal and postmenopausal. So there's a lot of different changes in her hormonal landscape that will preclude her from being a strong responder to a ketogenic diet as compared to her male counterparts. And part of the challenge that I have as a clinician is there's not actually a lot of the red circle. So when we look at evidence-based protocols for females, we actually don't see in the literature a lot of studies done on women because we are so complex. Okay, so we are, even like the woman at different points of the month, she's a confounding variable. So we don't actually often see a lot of relevant scientific information. So what we have to do as clinicians is we have to understand the female physiology. We have to also, using our experience and our clinical judgment to be able to develop protocols for her. And then we also have to kind of work it over time, because the woman will change through her, through many months and many years of working with you. So, the other thing we want to talk about is leptin, good old leptin. This is a hormone that is secreted from our adipose tissue. And leptin works directly on the brain in an area called the hypothalamus. And this is our satiety hormone, meaning that this is the hormone that makes us feel full. So leptin works in direct opposition to something called ghrelin. So if you've ever heard like your stomach like grumbling and you're feeling hungry, that's ghrelin telling you to eat. And then along with a couple other things, but leptin is the thing that tells you to stop eating. With a lot of women, especially women who are obese, we have something called leptin resistance. So normally the way that food consumption should go is something like this. You eat some food, your fat tissue starts secreting leptin, your brain picks up the leptin signals and says, full, stop eating, and then you stop eating. However, with women, what we find is that signal gets disrupted. So you are secreting higher levels of leptin, but in the same way that when you are insulin resistant, your cells are like, I'm done with insulin, I don't want to hear you anymore. They do the same thing with leptin. So you have a higher level of circulating leptin, but your brain thinks that the leptin levels are low. So what are you going to do from there? You're going to continue to eat, and you're going to continue to overeat, and then that contributes to weight gain. So one of the ways that we get around that in clinic is the application of something called a resistant starch. Who's heard of resistant starches before? Couple people? Okay, so resistant starch is kind of just what it sounds like. It resists digestion in the same way that an insoluble fiber that we talked about, those phytonutrient, like those green leafy vegetables, resistant starches will pass through the body and they will not count as your in terms of your carbohydrate absorption. So a couple examples of resistant starches would be raw bananas or green bananas. Green banana flour is my choice because I can measure it. Raw potato starch. Really nice hack for you guys. And this is the ketogenic expert saying to you that you can have white rice. Make some white rice, cool it down, drizzle a little olive oil. When the rice is cold, it is primarily a resistant starch. right? So it's primarily resistant starch if it is cold rice, not warm rice, not lukewarm rice. Cold rice with some olive oil is a resistant starch. And what we find in the literature is preprandial consumption of resistant starches, meaning you take a resistant starch before you eat. When we measure postprandial insulin levels and leptin levels, they're lower. So resistant starches are a very important component to a properly formulated ketogenic diet. And this is something that we talk about in Keto Clean a lot. Another consideration for females is cortisol resistance. So women are just resistant, right? We're just like resistant all day, every day. We have leptin resistance, we have cortisol resistance. Most females that come into me for weight loss, they have, maybe a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, maybe 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, like I, in my case. And they've just, they've been pregnant, they've delivered, they've jumped right into breastfeeding, they haven't slept in 7 years. And there are also probably other socioeconomic factors like they're working, they're the primary caregiver, the primary cooker and cleaner in the home. So they come to me exhausted. So when we are thinking about cortisol resistance, this is adrenal fatigue or adrenal insufficiency is another way to put it. Most women come to me in the orange category, in that middle category there. The way that it should normally work is you perceive a stress, physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, whatever. Your brain says, there's a stress. Let me talk to the adrenal glands, and then the adrenal glands will pulse out, cortisol will be released, and then it will have an cortisol is actually a really important hormone. It's a counter-regulatory hormone. So it will decrease your inflammation. But when cortisol is being released all day, every day, same with insulin resistance, your cells don't want to hear it anymore. So they will become resistant to the effects of cortisol. That's usually the middle or the orange or the red. And the red is really when we see cortisol resistance happening, where the cells are just completely not listening to the counter-regulatory effects that cortisol has. So this is important for females because when we are constantly releasing cortisol, we have a couple of precursors, cholesterol and pregnenolone specifically, that will now all drive their activity to create cortisol. This is called the pregnenolone steal. So your sex hormones, your testosterone and your estrogen, are going to be sacrificed at the expense of creating more cortisol. So super, super important. This is for men and women, but particularly my exhausted, overworked females. One of the ways that we circumvent that is through the application of an evening feed or a liver glycogen refeed in the evening. So we will have them follow a ketogenic diet during the day, keeping their macros, plant-based, eating the resistant starches, et cetera. But in the evening, we'll give them some honey. Honey has a beautiful 1-to-1 glucose to fructose composition, and it will help drive melatonin. So one of the features, and you guys can raise your hands if any ladies that are in the house here, you feel tired but wired, you can't fall asleep, you wake up in between 2 and 4 in the morning. Does it sound like mommyitis to anyone? No? Okay. So honey in the evening as a refeed to help you sleep through the night. Last one, I put this slide up because, and most women looking at the slide will be like, you didn't need to show me this. I knew that this was going to happen. But if you look at the dark green bars, that is the onset of menses. Right before it, we see a drop in brain serotonin activity. So I don't have a pointer here, but if you just look at the dip where there's the blue dotted line, and just underneath that we see those green shading. I know all the women in here are like, you didn't need to tell me that. I knew that was going to happen anyway. But when we think about females and we're thinking of keeping them on track on keto, this is when all the cravings happen. This is when we eat chocolate, and not the 100% chocolate that's in the back of the room there, but like the milk chocolate with all the sugar, and this is when we get them out of ketosis. So one of the things that we do to circumvent that, again, to help with that serotonergic drive, is to give them more carbohydrates in the week leading up to their period. So I usually will say somewhere between 10 to 20 grams of carbohydrates in the form of cruciferous vegetables and phytonutrient dense things. So we're getting like the sulforaphanes and all the great thing, and the antioxidant properties, et cetera, from the dark berries and the peppers. So lots of vegetables, 10 to 20 grams in the last 7 days leading up to their period. Couple other things that I like to do, and this is both for men and women, but in particular for women. I know the last speaker was talking about sleep-wake cycles. Really dialing down your sleep-wake cycles. So you're waking at the same time every day, no matter what you have on the agenda. You're sleeping at the same time, no matter what you have on the agenda. You have proper sleep hygiene and sleep practices. We're using things like blue light blocking glasses. You're not on Instagram at the end of the night, which of course I've been guilty of. But when you actually understand what this does to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is an area in the brain that regulates your sleep-wake cycles. It's your master oscillator in the body. You will get off of Instagram or Facebook or whatever you're on. The other thing that we talk about is fasting. So I briefly mentioned fasting. Fasting and the ketogenic diet are like Jay-Z and Beyonce. It is like the power couple extraordinaire. When you pair these two together, we are talking about amplifying not only the weight loss results and the physiological benefits that you can see, but we will also see things like the longevity and the health span stuff starting to increase as well. And ladies, you will never become bulky if you lift heavy weights. People that have adrenal insufficiency, you need to be lifting heavy weights, okay? Heavy weights AF, like max out 5 to 8 repetitions, so you can have that sort of, you can really drive a lot of repair to the muscles, but you're also helping with the adrenals as well. All right, I've got 15 seconds left, so I'm just going to say thank you so much for your attention and your support today. I would love to do a deeper dive with you guys. If you want to learn more about the ketogenic diet and fasting in the program that we run, it's called the Keto Clean Diet. It's free. There's nothing. It's just like my way of saying thank you for listening to me today. And if you feel like being on Instagram and following me on the gram, not at night though, Dr. Stephanie Estima. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
We got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is there any blue zone that eats a ketogenic diet? Because most blue zones are eat no meat and only a little bit of fish. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I would actually say that the type of ketogenic protocol that I am talking about is very consistent with Dr. Valter Longo or like those blue zone diets where meat is really used as a condiment and it's not necessarily eaten every day. So there are a lot of local plants and for sure there's meat that's consumed, but it's not all the time. And they will have healthy, nourishing fats like the olive oil and the avocado oil and the walnut oil and all the things that are local to the area.
Yeah, I really felt that your talk was a bit different than the other ketogenic speakers we've had because
Yeah.
you've really emphasized that part.
Yeah.
That's a little different.
Yeah.
So how does a vegan keto diet look like? Do you know have any clients that are using that?
I have not cracked the code on vegan keto yet. We do have a vegetarian option for people. Personally, I find the vegan diet very, it's hard to follow because it's very confusing. You have to make sure that you're combining your proteins and you're getting like the full spectrum there. So I don't support a vegan keto diet. I don't think it can be done well, although I know people have done it. I know that people have done it. That's just not my expertise.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And another one, any suggestion for women who've been in stress state for many years plus has sleep apnea?
Yeah, I would say follow the Keto Clean protocol. So things like supporting your adrenal glands by supplementing with a liver glycogen refeed in the evening. So honey, women, if you can prioritize your sleep. I know it's really hard when you have kids and they're crawling into your bed and waking you up at night, but as much as you can, sleep hygiene. So lights are low, blue light blocking glasses. You're not on your computer, so you're able to stimulate that melatonin release to be able to sleep. And again, in terms of just like your cyclical, your monthly cycle, making sure that you're carbing up in the week before your period.
Okay, and last thing, resistant starches, which I thought was just awesome.
Yeah.
How did you, can you just tell us, where can we learn more about that?
I talk a lot about it in my program. I think Chris Kresser does a lot on resistant starches as well. If you really just Google resistant starches and keto, you'll probably find a breadth of information there. I'd be super happy if anybody wants to kind of reach out to me and continue the conversation. I'd be super happy to give you some resources, some examples, and some more applications on it.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
People can reach out to Dr. Estima on the website, right?
Yeah, on the
Instagram.
website. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you so much. There you go.
See you.
I'll leave this here.